right. Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad to see all of y'all here. We are going to open up the meeting as usual with one of our members saying the mission statement. Brooke,
All
are you ready?
right. Yes. WIPLA's mission is to provide an inspiring forum for women to explore and advance their creative development, to promote their work in the marketplace, and to infuse the community with their spirit of cooperation and invention.
All right. Yay.
Yay.
All right. Um, Brooke, you are our membership chair. Would you like to introduce new members and guests?
Yes, I've been trying to scan names because
Okay.
I am not as connected and familiar with as many of you as you are with each other. But I did hear um, Rebecca mention that this was her
Yes.
first time on this call, and also I think that Deidre is fairly new, like 2 or 3 months.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, and welcome. I just sent another email to help people find those links on our website to update things on our calendar and to update your member profile. So if you've joined in the last few months, you just got another email to give you those links in front of your face again in case you need them, so we can help you engage in your membership and make those connections. Did I miss anyone?
Hi, I'm new in the group,
Okay.
and my name's Anna Lynn Anderson Lee, and I'm more in the realm of photography and writing.
Great. Good to have you.
Thanks. Glad to be here. Glad to learn from y'all.
Yeah, welcome. All right.
Yes.
Right.
All right.
Is anybody else? If not, I'm going to pitch it back to Gretchen.
Your audio is on.
Okay,
Oh.
it's up. Back to you.
Okay. Marie, our visual arts chair.
Our show premiered earlier this month. Our opening was on the 6th. What a great show. Beautiful art. We had over 100 guests or 100 people in attendance. If you haven't seen it, go by the post and you have to check it out. It is a beautiful exhibit. If you go Monday through Friday, you get the first hour parking free. If you go on the weekend, it's only the first 20 minutes that are free, but it's a great show. We're very proud of it.
And it's also a cool place to visit, just to, if you haven't been there at the post, it's the old main post office right at the edge of downtown. And it's really interesting how they have revamped the whole place, how they have left a lot of, like, the main counter when you first walk in. They've left that there where you would normally have gone to, drop off mail or whatever. And yeah, and just go through it, go check out their food court, and go up to the very top, the roof, where they have events up there and gardens up there. It's just really a cool place.
And I
I think
understand,
our show really fits well.
I haven't made it to
Huh.
the roof, but I understand that the view of downtown from the roof is just incredible.
It is. Yeah, it is amazing. All right, Ellen. There you are, Ellen. Would you
Good
like to
evening.
talk about our upcoming literary events?
Yes, November is writing month. And I hope everybody's scribbling very quickly now. And Annalyn, jump in, as soon as you can sit down and start doing some writing. We have 2 writing events in November. The one is the monthly member meeting. And every November, that is our literary night where members can read pieces, either poetry, short stories, essays, as long as you don't take more than 5 minutes. And there is a sign up for that. I am I know it was coming, and I'm assuming it's there. You can sign up through the calendar.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
I confirm.
Hey,
Yeah.
hey,
both-
Ellen, yeah,
both
it's
of the
Melody.
readings.
I've added all the sign up geniuses to the calendars, the both calendar events.
So we're good to go. Okay.
Yes.
So as soon as the meeting is over tonight, all you literary folks just start signing right up. And the theme is doors, which can be an open door, a closed door, a Dutch door, a locked door, go with it where you may. So I look forward to hearing everybody's writing with that, because that is coming up. And then also we have our annual Haunted Holidays reading, and this is done in conjunction with Brazos Bookstore and also the Houston Writers Guild. If you like writing scary stories, or if there was a scary story that happened to you and you want to tell us about it, you can do that. And it will be on November 18th, which is a Saturday. It will take place at Brazos Bookstore, so it will be an in-person event. And again, short stories, essays, poetry, as long as it's within 5 minutes. You get the pattern here. Because we always love having a lot of people sign up, so we get to hear from as many people as possible, and that's why we'll kind of put the time frame there. But Haunted Holidays means it's not just Halloween. It's everything from Halloween through New Year's Day. And there's a lot of holidays in there. There's a lot of partying in there. So you definitely want to write about your holiday, your favorite holiday, or maybe your scariest holiday. And some of us just like to write about ghosts and grim reapers, and we're weird like that. And so we create an event where we get to do that at least once a year. And the one thing I also do want to say is we did have an anthology contest with the Houston Writers Guild.
Yes.
The winners of that will be announced October 6th at Authorpalooza, which is in the medical hotel down in the medical area. That's also on the calendar. You don't have to sign up for it, but there may be a small charge involved in attending that if you're not one of the ones participating in the anthology. But the anthology will be for sale both October 6th, Friday, October 6th, and at the Brazos Bookstore. So for all of your holiday shopping, doesn't matter the holiday, get 10, pass them around. Everybody will love you. And all the signups are on the calendar.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, Margot, would you like to talk about the programs and outings that are coming up?
Yes, so I've already mentioned that Chris Rogers is doing a workshop for us the first Saturday in October, which is October the 7th. It will be on Zoom, and it's on writing sticky characters that stick with you, so they're interesting characters. That's coming up. And then I'm pretty sure we're going to do a group tour of the Printing Museum on October 28th, Saturday morning, maybe go to lunch afterwards. But I've contacted them several times and have not gotten any clarification about what they do with the deposit. So, I mean, I want to know if we get the deposit back at the end. That's the way it usually works.
Right.
So I just want to double check on that. Then we have a journal making workshop in November. We have a Christmas party. So we have check the calendar because we have lots of things coming up.
Yeah, we do. Okay, cool. Looks like they're still working on that. Then why don't we go to the sharing portion of the meeting?
Well,
Yeah.
I just put something in the calendar about a journal launch Sunday, this coming Sunday at 3 in the afternoon. And it's for the Hot Poet new edition of the Equinox. The theme is Into the Thicket. And so we'll meet there at 3 o'clock on Sunday, and we'll have readings from the journal. So it should be very entertaining. It's a nice little venue.
Right. All right. That does sound fun.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
We usually have this next portion at the end of our meetings, but this would be a good time for people to talk about what they've been doing in their lives artistically. Just if you'd like to talk for just like a minute and a half, just what might be going on with you as an artist. Mildred.
Well, I would like to announce that I just signed a contract with a publisher to publish my memoir. And it is due out the middle of December. I'm so excited about that. What a labor of love that was. But anyway, the title is Daddy's House, a daughter's memoir of setbacks. Let's see, I changed the title twice, but I think I'm sticking with this one. A daughter's memoir of setbacks, something else, and growing new roots. But anyway, I will just post that on the website as we move along. I can't wait to see my book cover.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, this is my first
Cool.
publication, and I am so excited about it.
Cool. Well, we're excited for you. We can't wait either. All right. Who would like to go next? What's been going on at Kay?
Well, it's not very exciting.
But
I am in a lovely writing group with some members of WIVLA, and I have not been submitting for 11 months. And this past month, I got a short story idea and I submitted. So I am celebrating that because I think COVID did a head wrap on me, or I don't know, it did something. I just got into a strange place, but the draft was nothing really to be proud of, but I put pencil to paper and it came out, and I shared it with the writing group. So I'm celebrating that.
yay. Just it's been a weird year for a lot of us. So just getting it down on paper, that's cool. Okay, who else wants to share their world? Donna.
I just want to mention that this coming Thursday is a Archway reading. We're trying to start at 6:15 now. It's at the gallery, and we're running a list. Margot's in charge of that. But yeah, so if you want to hear some work, come. I think there's probably the list is already made, but I'm not sure.
Okay, that's this Thursday, correct?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay, all right. Who else? Okay, Shirley.
Okay, this is on the calendar, but I want to mention it again, that Susan Salter and I, along with Brenda Bowman, are having a show at the Houston Club on October the 10th from 6 to 8. So we've been working hard getting ready for that. Both Susan and I have pieces in the show at Post also, which has been exciting. This is my first show of this nature, so it's a little nerve-wracking, but we hope you will come. And
yes,
information is on the calendar.
Okay, I thought I had seen it there. Yeah.
Yes. If you want more information, just let us know.
All right.
Thanks.
Sounds great.
Thanks.
Okay, who else? Janet?
I'm Janet. And I'm excited, but this has been so stressful. But I've worked for over 10 years in pediatrics in a major cancer hospital here. And so I've written a whole lot of poems, and so I've taken, how many of them do I have? 27 of them, and I'm doing a small chapbook. So I wish somebody else was publishing it for me, because this has been quite an adventure. My anxiety has reached levels I didn't know it could. But anyway, this is just a proofing copy, but I sent my part out today,
Yes.
and the technical person who's been putting it all together, she's sending it out in the next 2 days. And so I don't know how long it'll be, but it's just really, it was such a beautiful experience. You know, I have it separated into, my first part is about, you know, just walking down the hospital halls. When you're in a hospital, you literally never know what you're going to see or what you're going to hear. And then
Right.
the second part I call Wings, and that's really about the creative process, the different art work that we've done. And then the last section is Moments, and it's the impact that the different moments have had on me. Now, I have had to change. I've changed all names, all genders. They don't even want me to say the name of the hospital. You know, I have legal permission to do it, but you know, I really have had to change a lot of stuff. And I'm just so stressed out. I feel like I'm not showing my appreciation of it, but I really love it. It was probably one of the most rewarding experiences I've ever had in my life. While there was difficulties to it, the courage of the children, the staff, everything. And so I think it's a beautiful book, and I hope I've ever done everything right, and that the real thing turns out okay. But I need to go into therapy and start drinking a lot of wine. You know, it's stressful. Good, thank you.
It is, yes. And it is truly a labor of love. I think that's like how Mildred had phrased it. And yeah, once it's done, you are so exhausted. You just want to curl under the covers and, like you said, just drink a lot of wine.
That's right.
But, oh, I'm looking forward to reading that poetry.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right, Jean.
And yeah, I have 2 pieces up in the expansion show, and then I have 3 pieces up at the Watercolor Art Society right now. And I'm giving a workshop this coming Friday, this Friday, at the Watercolor Art Society Houston. It's going to be surreal play. We're going to be doing some entertaining things, and there are openings for that class, and it's for 3 hours Friday from 1:30 to 4:30. And there is a charge for it. So I believe it's $60 for members, $70 for non-members.
Okay, great.
Hi, I'm Anna Lynn.
Yes.
And yeah, I found out about this group because a friend of mine has 3 pieces in the exhibition at the Post. So I'm looking forward to going to see that. And also because I've gotten back into photography and writing, which I've always kind of done a little bit. I was professional writer at one point before, you know, kids and stuff, life happens. So a personal friend of mine is one of the artists at Archway. So I got involved with Archway, and I've read one piece there, and I'm reading, I think, some poetry there this Thursday. So,
oh, good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I hope to see you there.
Yeah, I'll be there, and I'm pretty sure I'm on the schedule, right, Margot? And yeah, and I'm getting back into some writing classes at Rice, the adult education class and stuff. And so yeah, that's been challenging. It's been very different. I was a journalist before, so that was just straight facts, pretty much, no emotion. So it's been fun.
Good. You're in a good group. I'm glad you joined.
Yeah, thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Anyone else? Okay, Margot.
Our October presenter is Narola Morgan, and she is so creative. And she's one of these people who really thinks outside of the box. And she's going to give a presentation on her creative dolls that she makes. She's also a storyteller. And Jean and I took a workshop with her a few months ago.
Okay.
Yeah. And just taking scraps and adding things to them and making dolls. She's really fascinating. So I think people will enjoy her presentation.
Oh, yes, very much so. Cool. Okay. Brooke.
So I am back in a studio after not being in one for over a year. I kind of grouped up with 3 other artists, and we have a studio in First Industrial that's just right across the parking lot from Winter Street. And we have storefront, which is amazing. And I'm also running our business out of there, and we do a creative cafe one Saturday every month. So it's $25 for our facilitator and the supplies we use. And it's really more about, we have all these different mindfulness practices and ways to kind of engage people in creativity as a way to get to know yourself and your values. So every month we try one of our practices, and Kiera, this wonderful writer and artist, facilitates for us, which means that I get to play. So yeah, it's really fun, and we haven't really gotten the word out there, but I'll start putting it on the calendar in case anybody's interested in that. It's really a more fellowship than it is anything else. It's sitting around playing with all the different materials that we have. We are mostly people who are not necessarily making art to produce something, but to get to know ourselves better. So the pressure is off, right? It's just play.
Right.
So yeah, I'll put that on the calendar.
Okay. Oh, good. Okay. And I would like to also mention, I know we have at least 3 artists that are here tonight who have studios in Sawyer Yards: Rona, Melody, and Marie. And Sawyer Yards is doing an art ramble on September 30th. That's a Saturday, that afternoon through evening. And it's just like a big pumped up open studios, but they'll have food in all the buildings and music. And I would really recommend going to that.
2 to 7.
There's 2 to 7. Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you. All right.
With any luck, there might be some alcohol there.
There will, I'm sure.
I could use a little right now, but we're all good. We're all good. So,
okay. All right.
Oh, and did you talk? I had you turned way down, so we could talk. Have you talked about the rat cards?
I have not talked about the rat cards yet. Would you like to mention those?
So
Does you have one in your hand?
I know. I was like, if you went to the exhibition, you'll notice that there's a 3 foot by 6 foot poster, I guess, or sticker on one of the walls that has the rat card on it. You can't see it because I've got a virtual background here, but we had a bunch of rat cards at the opening. We had lots of people there. We've got a QR code on the bottom of the rat card and the poster that's up on the wall. I was there today cleaning fingerprints off the walls. I don't know what people do. It was almost like they had a stack of newspapers, wiped their hands on them, and then grabbed the walls. So I had my Mr. Clean magic erasers and just went after it. So
thank you.
I'm going to have a bunch of them in my studio So y'all that, at Sawyer Yards, come by and get them, and anybody else that wants them for Archway
Yes.
or whatever, come by and grab some.
Yes.
Anybody who wants to come by. When Mildred's in town, she can come by.
Yes. And, and I was out of town this last weekend, visiting a friend in Austin. And so she had a meeting at her house, a group that she's in. They meet at different people's houses, and they were at her house this last weekend, SACWA, at Studio Art Quilt Associates. And everyone went around the room, told what they did and showed their work and all. And so when it came to be my turn, I talked about Wivla. And I wish I had rack cards there to hand out. There were at least 3 or 4 people that showed interest in, in joining Wivla, especially when they heard about the upcoming collaboration show.
And it's such a nice card.
And beautiful cards. So so we need to go to the art ramble at Sawyer Yards. Melody Studio is in Silver Street. Rona, where is yours?
Silos.
In the silos. And
Silos
Marie,
23. Yeah.
Okay. Marie, are you going to have you decided on whether you're going to have a space over in Silver Street in their open section?
They're offering us the warehouse.
Yeah.
But, no, I'm not doing it.
Okay.
No, I'll pass. Yeah. Once my studio is open, I definitely want to exhibit the cards. So I'll be swinging by your studio, Melody, and getting a whole bunch, because I'll be passing those out.
Okay, great.
All right.
So
okay, go ahead.
So let me just explain how we're going to do this. I forgot I should have worn a hat because Michelle's wearing a hat. So I have the file on my desktop, and so I will be sharing my desktop while she will be talking. I will spotlight her. So this will be a new thing. We haven't done this before, so this is exciting.
Yes.
So, Margot, I guess, is it your turn?
Yeah. Would you like to introduce her?
Sure. I don't
right.
want to spend too much time talking.
Okay.
Because Michelle, I'm sure she has a lot to say. We had a great time. I think it was in May. She had people into her studio, and it was just fantastic to see her artwork and hear her talk about her journey, how she became interested in welding and creating these beautiful pieces of art. And I was just very inspired. I will say she comes from West Texas, the Chihuahuan Desert, a place spotted with cacti, steel rig trees, and pump jacks. And her sculptures continue the vision of big blue skies punctuated with iron and steel. And she has a family heritage of a coal mine blacksmith grandfather and recreational painter father. And so she's sort of carrying on this family tradition of art. And I'm very thankful and excited to hear what she has to say. Thank you, Michelle.
Thank you, Margot.
Okay.
Hello all, and my apologies. We don't know what happened last night. We just had a great visit and everything worked.
Isn't that the truth?
Okay. Can you hit the
I'm
where it's
working on
just
it.
one?
Here we go.
There we go. Okay. So this is a PowerPoint that I've kind of expanded for tonight. Let's go to the next slide. So this is the West Texas that I come from. It is flat and there's sky. And you can see 150 miles away to the mountains. Next slide. So my aesthetic comes from that flat land, and that has informed all my art. My aesthetic comes from that, with the flat horizons, then every once in a while something punctuates the sky. And so my art is about mass and space and shadow, and they can be manipulated by line. So I'm doing a little bit of calligraphy with steel in 3D. So slide, please. So when I first came to Houston, one of the introductions to art, I always made art growing up. My father had us in painting classes, and I've done painting and watercolors and acrylics and oils and ceramics. And when I first came to Houston, I went to a Lawndale opening. This is in the old building, the original Lawndale. And I got there late and everybody was gone, but the building was unlocked. So I went in. It was Jesse Lott's life-size paper mache figures. I don't know if any of you had ever seen that. And I just loved them. So I knew nothing about him. I knew nothing about Lawndale. I was new to the city. So I looked him up and I went and took some classes from him. And then I was working his process. He called it El Pinatero. And in the early 1900s, or late 80s, I guess, 5 of us were written up in Museum and Arts magazine that were studying with Jesse, and the men were serious artists and the women were not. And you can't tell a West Texas girl that. So I puffed up and I was interested in welding. So I took a welding class. The teacher did not want me in the class, as I told Margot's heard these. So when I went to the first class, he turned his back on me. He wasn't going to talk to me. But I went to the school where all the welders go to get accreditation to make more money for their work, higher salaries. And so I went, okay, the next class, it's not going to be a problem that you don't want me here. I brought 2 dozen chocolate chip and oatmeal cookies. And those welders who are highly accomplished were in my booth for the next couple of semesters, and they taught me to weld. And some of them mentored me for like 20 years. So a great group of guys. And the teacher didn't count. Next slide. So this is me in the studio. That's one of my guys. This picture was taken at Blumenthal, where I would roll my steel on a cart across the street, flat steel, and roll it in the roller and then roll it back. And it's not flat anymore, so it would want to escape my cart and I might have to make 2 or 3 trips. But I now own this particular roller. So in 2000, I had been working welding for about 10 years. I started at 1 inch and got bigger in my garage studio at that time. And so around 2000, the International Sculpture Conference was here. So in 1999, we started meeting, and I was the committee to get buildings to agree to have a show downtown in the skyscrapers downtown. So they told me they needed 16 buildings. So I did a spreadsheet. I harassed people every week until I got 16 buildings to agree. Then about 4 months before the International Sculpture Conference, the committees met and they said, oh, we only need 4. Well, I had been calling these people for 9 months and I couldn't just drop them. We're going to have a show in your building. So I just started calling artist friends, and you want to have a show? I've got a building. And so we used all 16 of the buildings. I kept 1 building for me to curate, and it was an outside plaza, 2 plazas on either side of the building. They've since landscaped and you couldn't do it anymore at First City Tower. On one side, I put a 70-foot John Henry. On the other side, I put a Tim Glover, and I had with John Henry was a 30-foot Meredith Jack, Butch Jack for it. And so John Henry was the only one out of town. And then I went, we got to have a woman. I'm curating this. I'm putting a woman out here. So I started calling around to find out, you know, what women do big sculptures. And the only one that I found that did one of any size was Roberta Harris. And her sculpture was already committed to Allen Parkway. So I went, this is just ridiculous. All you have to do is cut up a bunch of steel and stick it together. I can do that. Duh, I can do that. So next slide. I made a 30-foot sculpture that was on First City Plaza. And I did fundraising. I had a lot of help from friends. A lot of the local art welders helped me because I only had 4 weeks to do something that should have taken about 6 months. And so this is it, La Mujer Roja. She sold to Craig Hall in Frisco, Texas for the Texas Sculpture Garden. And that was quite a thrill, and I wasn't expecting it. I was just doing it because we had to have a woman representing. So Jerry Hooks had told me when I first started pursuing professional art that it takes 10 years to be an artist. I started welding in 90, and this sculpture sold in 2000. She knew what she was talking about. Next slide, please. So from that sculpture, I have a good presence in the Dallas Metroplex. I got picked up by Craighead Green Gallery. And again, I started small. This is about a 2-foot tall wall mounted piece. Craighead has 14-foot ceilings, so even there they started getting big. I just like working big. So next slide, please. So this is Chrysalis. This is a 10-foot piece at sunset, and it's about energy rising. And I think you can actually see it. I can actually see the energy rising. It's in a collection in Dallas at this point. Next slide, please. This is another one from the gallery called Walking in Chi, and they sold this. There's such a good gallery. I had 7 pieces in this show with Walking in Chi was in. It was, the name of the show was Karma on Demand. And in the first hour, they sold 3 of them and paid for their expenses of the show. So they're happy with me. Next slide, please. So for the last 3 decades, I've been making large scale sculptures for the Dallas Metroplex, primarily for them, across the nation, but they have the biggest number on one site. This is mother and child at Baylor Medical's foundation in front of the Women and Children's Center. And these sculptures are landmarks. People stop and have their picture taken before they go in the hospital and have their babies. So they literally are, they'll say, stop at the red sculpture, that's your entrance. Next sculpture, please. This is the Guardian in Frisco, Texas at Fire Station 6. It's 17 feet, and that's a glass fireman's hat. And everything on it is an element that specifically refers to the fireman. I work real close with the stakeholders to make sure that I'm talking about what they want to talk about with the art. So the cutouts to reduce the wind resistance that you see, one of them on the left-hand side, that's from the Maltese Cross, which is their patch, the fireman's patch. And there are 8 characteristics on that patch that are important to the fireman. Next slide, please. This is Worlds of Knowledge tree. It's a stainless steel piece, also 17 feet at El Centro College downtown. And the little dots that you kind of see on the top on the infinity sign are cutouts. You have to have wind, reduce the wind resistance and in a lot of places that you're putting these sculptures. This place in particular, because the wind between those buildings blows all the time. And those cutouts, I worked with the students and they designed what their education meant to them. And then I picked the ones that I could actually do in the steel, because you have to have 2-point contact. And so what I've got are light bulbs and seedlings that are cut out on that. And then the Worlds of Knowledge trees, there's 3 spheres in the body that have to do with the education that the students are getting. Next, please. You'll get, okay, this is the video. Can you hit play? It should start playing. There we go. Okay, this is 4 computerized light towers I did in 2021 for the city of Arlington, between City Hall and there's Founders Park. So it would be like George R. Brown Convention Center and Discovery Green. I love this child playing on the lights on the floor. They do hopscotch on it. There's a 5-lane road in between the towers. I brought a drone photographer to get this, to take these shots. He had a Hasselblad camera on his drone. And you can see City Hall and the 5-lane road. And you get a little bit of sense of the scale. And though if you watch the lights, they're moving, they go around, they can change colors. Each tower can function independent.
Look at this, so interesting. This lady's from Texas.
This is
and she wanted to learn to weld. So she welds.
I'm hearing somebody and the video cut off.
Okay, Michelle, no, excuse me. Could everyone mute themselves? Thank you.
Okay. Is
So,
this?
Yeah, I guess the video shut off.
It shut off. Well, okay. This is Flame de Spore, which is the flame of the spirit. And it's the sculpture. The reason I got picked to do the towers. It's got blue lights in it. It's 12 feet tall, and one of my welder buds from the class and I made that one weekend in the driveway. We had 4 20-foot sticks of steel, and I said, I want to make an Italian cypress tree. No drawing, no nothing. We just did it. Next slide, please. Okay, so this is the technical drawing for the 4 sculptures. So Steve, is my husband, is just so amazing. As y'all may have heard me say before, every job he's ever had prepared him to take care of my art. This is an example of it. He knows how to make these technical drawings. They're about 3 feet wide, and they go in a book that was about 6 inches thick. And you sit on we had meetings on the back of pickup trucks because it was COVID, and we'd be flipping these huge pages going through the book. This had to be approved by the landscape architect, his 7 engineers, the city engineers, and city council. And if you'll note on the tower part of it, you can see air all the way between. You see the weave. There's not a mast in there. Next slide. Okay, this is making the maquette in my studio, and it's that drawing that we've blown up on the left there, that's blown up to 6 feet. Then there's never enough hands when you're doing something like this. This is in the maquette. I was trying to do what I did with the original one, which is actually weaving it. So now I have more than those little clamps than I ever thought I would own. Next slide, please. I have a bridge crane in my studio. So on the left, that yellow thing I'm holding is the button that manages the bridge crane. So the bridge crane is moving the maquette. The maquette I brazed because the material is so thin. But if you'll notice, there's a mast in the middle. There's a pole in the middle of the maquette. Next slide, please. The first thing you make when you start a project like this is, after the maquettes and you've worked out how you're going to do things, is what's called the fixture. And the fixture is a 3 rings that are welded in a stationary position where they can't move, with their horizontal with volume in between, and they have holes in them, and that's where the bolts go through. So your bolts are your weakest point. They have to be a special alloy. There's only one country that makes them, that's Japan. Normally, in normal circumstances, I just order them and they're here in a week. But because it was at the beginning of lockdown, it took 8 weeks for the bolts to get here. So we had the fixture made except for the bolts, and everybody that can't pour the concrete, because the fixture goes in the concrete. So what you're seeing sticking out is a little bit of a pipe and the bolts, and the bolts, there's a bolt sticking up right next to my right foot looking at me, and they stick up about 8 inches, and the pipe has electricity already going through it. This was a year before the sculptures were made, so everything has to be precise. And the fixture, what it does is holds the bolts perfectly vertically, perfectly spaced, so that a year later you can drop 10 tons on top of them and everything's good. Next slide, please. I love the complications of this, the complexity of these projects. And then I'm relieved when they're over. These are the masts, 40 foot on the big trailer, and that's me on the mast. And you can see on the bottom the holes that the bolts are going to go through. And the diameter of that base is only 30 inches. So we're taking 4-story sculptures and balancing them on 30 inches on these bolts in the fixture. Next slide, please. This is, that's Honey with his face covered up with the mask. Those are the finials that go on top. And it's a star with the Arlington in it. It's the city logo. The insert is all the pieces that it took to make those finials. And they were made while the fixtures were being made, because they had to be separate. They're box steel. Box steel, you can't hot dip galvanize, because when it's in the hot dip, the zinc vat, which is very hot, like 1200 something degrees, the gases and the metals are expanding and they can blow up. It's possible. So you have to have weep holes. Well, the weep holes arise a problem in that you don't want weep holes in your sculpture, because then it can rust from the inside out. So these are sealed box steel, and they had to have a special thermodynamic coating on them. Next slide. on big projects like this, I subcontract out. I could weld them in about 10 years, or I can subcontract it out to a crew and we can get it done on a timely basis. This is Sammy. He owns the shop. It's an incredible shop. It's huge. It was Howard Hughes's service building when they were making oil field service. And so what we've got here is the start of one of the masts. The first one was really slow because we had to figure out how to do it. This is not something artists are doing all the time. And you can weave steel on a smaller basis, but you can't weave it on something this big. So we had to figure out a faux method of making it look like it was woven, but it's actually not. And on the floor, you see some of the bands that we're putting on it. Next slide, please. This is the mast again, and more of the bands. And you can see they're on the left, they're kind of woven, they're kind of rolled. Some of them are rolled. And there's other towers on the right. One of the welders is back there watching us take pictures. They're such a good shop. If you see the one, I'll show you in another image. Next slide, please. Okay, there is a band to weave it. The band is at 40 feet long, is being held up at one end. The height of that arc is with the bridge crane, and then it's going over to the sculpture you see on the left. The material is thin enough that lifting it at this point, lifting it with the bridge crane is enough to bend it. And if you see that there's two bands on the floor, and they're not just a straight steel, they had to be cut out at a very precise angle because the sculpture bulges at near the bottom. And the big man back there is Harry. He's taking pictures, and Sammy and Steve are back there too. Next slide. This is some of the welding going on, and it has to be very precise where it crosses. A mistake of 1/8 of an inch is 6 inches at the bottom, is 6 inches at the top. So it's really meticulous, slow work. It takes about 45 minutes to get one band welded in place on the other band that crosses it. Next slide. We had lots of meetings. That's Sammy, Steve, and me, and we're talking, discussing. It takes staying on top of things to make sure nothing gets overlooked. Next slide. That's me signing them at the end. And if you see that chalk on there, some of you know I write symbols on it. And all 4 towers are covered with symbols from the bottom all the way to the top under the coating. The ones that you're looking at right now are from the 72 Names of God, which is a little book you can get on Amazon, and it's from the Kabbalah. And the one that I thought I would never use, I actually used, because you can see I'm there working in a mask, is the one that's the anti-plague symbol. Next slide. This is all 4 of them on the floor. You can barely see the back one on the right. I'm in there with the mask on, but you can see how big this building is. Look at that back wall at the ceiling where it appears to arc. That doesn't arc. It's a straight across building. That arc is the camera distorting it because the distance is that big. And I'm not even taking up 1/3 or 1/4 of this building. with my 4 sculptures. Next slide. After they're made, then they go to the zinc back. This is liquid zinc in the vat down there. It's highly toxic. So we, the client, don't go in there. They took these pictures for me. That the sculpture is lowered into it, and it's held on cradles that we made, that the round part at the top, and then there's a horizontal bar that goes across. We made those because the material is so thin, the weave part, that the weight of the mast would crush it if we hadn't held it off itself. So it goes in the vats, and it's liquid, covered with liquid zinc, and that's galvanizing. Next slide. This is the light ring that goes on the top, and it's just came out of the vat. When zinc first comes out of those vats and hardens, it's really beautiful, shiny silver. Next slide, please. This is an assembled tower. We have now loaded on trucks, the galvanized one, and taken it to an industrial paint shop. Because paint doesn't last forever, and this is going to be really difficult to go in and repair 30 years from now or whatever. These are things that I do that aren't necessarily required for me, but required of me, but I want to give the client the very best that I can, and low maintenance is a big deal. So the hot dip galvanizing wasn't required, but it is more durable than the paint. So because it's steel, it's going to rust. So so first it was hot dip galvanized, and that came out of my pocket, and then now it's being painted. And if you look at those, there's kind of a trash can looking thing over to the left, and there's a couple of round bars that go all the way to the ceiling. Those are about 20 feet apart. Those towers are 40 feet, and that forklift, the driver is just amazing, maneuvers it between those towers to get it into the paint booths. I'm just in awe of some of these men's skills. I was talking to the head of the shop, and he said that guy's been with us for 35 years. He considers that forklift his, and nobody else gets to drive it. Next slide, please. Okay, so we've loaded them on trucks again, and this is installation in Arlington. So the trucks pull up. We had 4 of them, and in a line, we've got the streets closed off. They closed off a full city block, and more than a city block. So the first thing you do is rig it and take it off, lift it up a little, and then the truck drives off. Then the crane moves it over to the side, and it's put on cradles so that it doesn't lay down on itself. Next slide, please. Then after it's on those cradles, it's re-rigged at the top, so you can see the straps at the very top from the crane, and it's lifted up again and moved over to the top of those plinths, and all those wiring, the wiring and the bolts, everything has to line up perfectly. So we got guys up there, and I was up there, excuse me, and there's not that much space to stand. Next slide, please. This is the man lift. We had the yellow that you see is a 70-ton crane, and this is a 6-story man lift. And there are guys up there, and they're installing the lights on that ring that you have seen. So it's been bolted down and onto the plinth, which is 7 feet tall. And there's somebody up there working. Next slide, please. This is the general contractor in the blue shirt. the blue with the horizontal stripe. Steve, me going to tell them something, and 4 guys. We've got the lights on. You can see some of the wires dangling, so that putting the light fixtures on is one thing, and then wiring them in is another. And that took about 2 weeks to get the wiring done. And then after the wiring's done, a programmer comes down and has to program them. Next slide. This is me on the forklift, taking pictures with my phone. You can see the light fixtures. They're not all on there yet. This was in 2021, and Texas had one of its freezes, the 27-degree, and Dallas has, the Metroplex has awful ice storms. I've been in them before. I've watched 18-wheelers just slide into each other. So we were scheduled to install the week of the storm, and they said, we're going ahead. And I finally had to just tell them, no, we're not coming. I can't have my trucks driving. I can't put them at risk, the drivers and the trucks and the sculptors at risk driving in an ice storm. It's not safe for me driving in an ice storm, and it's not going to be safe for anybody who's on the installation crew during an ice storm. So we're watching the weather, holding our breath for the week, waiting. We installed on a Sunday, and I went, oh, this is going to be so much fun. We're going to be installing in 30 degrees. As long as it's not dangerous, then we'll do it. It warmed up to 65 degrees. We had been talking very seriously to the installation gods, and they took care of us. Next slide, please. The first time I saw the lights on, I was with the drone photographer and a ground photographer and a small group of the crew, and we just gasped. They're just so beautiful. They have transformer boxes. Each tower can operate independently, have multiple color lights. The lights can move up and down, as you saw in the little bitty. They can swirl around. They can each one do something differently. And when you open that transformer box, it has a color wheel. You can pick the colors off of a color wheel. Next slide. This is just a close-up of the Arlington Towers, and you can see the street traffic going by. Next slide. This gives you a feel of the size of the site. The rectangle on the left is Arlington City Hall, and then you can see the street and then the park, but you don't see the pavilion where they have the concerts. There's several buildings over to the right more, and you can kind of see how far apart the towers are. That's a big city block, that not a normal size city block. The building was an 80s Bauhaus building. It was incredibly Bauhaus boring. Some Bauhaus is really good. This one was just, so what they did was they rebuilt the infrastructure, plumbing, streets. And my towers, on a project like this, my towers are always the cherry on top, the last thing to be done. It was a $28 million project all total. It started out 26, but it was during the political unrest where in one of the Carolinas and in Austin, someone drove a car into a crowd at an event. So they spent another $2 million and put ballards at the ends of the blocks, and they're in the ground, so you don't see them right now. And when they come up, they're rated to like 30 tons at 15, 20 miles an hour. They will stop a vehicle. And they come in and out of the ground just for that. So what Arlington does is they have concerts almost every week in the summertime. They bring in food trucks and other performers on the street, and then they put the ballards up. And we've gone to one of those concerts. It's just a whole lot of fun. People are all over the place. They bring their picnic tables, their children running around. They're sitting on the steps of the city hall. It's really a good thing. Next, this is another view of the street, and we can see all four towers. And you can see the lights that are in the ground. You can see how they work. So those lights shine up to help diffuse the light evenly all over the sculptures. Next slide. And there's always traffic there as well as a breeze. Next slide. This is my team. On the left is Sammy, and then there's Steve, technical partner, me, and the man on the right owns the paint company. Next slide. What I'm striving with my art is to make the complex simple and aesthetic. Next slide. And it's not always easy. It's always a lot of fun, and I hope that people enjoy and it speaks to them on certain levels and functions as it's supposed to over years, over time. Next slide. So my aesthetic has not changed with liking the flat spaces with something vertical coming up, and enjoying the aspects of nature that are curvilinear. That's it.
That's great. I love that. They're just stunning. I have to ask though, Michelle, do you ever run into that original welding instructor that didn't like girls?
No, no. I left him in the dust.
I have a question that,
Yeah.
that it doesn't relate to your art, but maybe it does. I remember, like, probably decades ago, WIVLA used to have these tea parties and people would wear hats. Do you remember that? Because I remember I made a video of some people. Now it seems like, yeah, it seems like your hat is like a big part of your brand. I mean, it gives you that, it just gives you that look of confidence and take charge. Is that something that you planned, or this had just grown from?
I didn't initially plan it, but I'm only 5'2". And so anytime I go to an opening or anything, I'm getting through the crowd with elbows between, below their elbows because I'm short. And so, and people would say, "Where's the artist?" And nobody could see me. And so I went, well, if you wear a hat, people can see you. That lady over there with the hat.
Yeah.
So let's get some presents.
Yeah. Well, and it's interesting. You don't seem that short in person. I think because you have a big personality, but your art, I mean, it's interesting because your art is so tall. So
Yes.
do you think there's,
I can't get it tall enough. I need somebody to give me a bunch of money, and so I can make. There's a lot of sculptors in Europe that are doing 100-foot sculptures.
Wow.
And there's some here too in the States.
Amazing.
That was amazing.
There's some stunning stuff.
And I love the colors. It's not just the size and the shapes, but the colors are just
sometimes beautiful. I'm in control of that and sometimes not. The 4-story yellow one at the end, They wanted that. That's at Preston Plaza in downtown Dallas. It's a high-end shopping center where Tootsie's and those places are, and there's a roundabout. And they said, make it as tall as you can, and we want it to be seen. And I said, do you have a color preference? And they said yellow, and I went, okay. I actually don't care, because it's about the form. I mean, I do care, but it's about the form. And if I get the form right, if I get a good shape and an interesting activity in the sculpture, then you can put any pretty color on it. Colors are beautiful.
So Michelle, I was curious on the last ones we saw where there were the lights coming up from the ground. Is that part of your design as well?
No, that's the lighting design. The lighting almost cost as much as my part did.
Wow.
It's and people ask me how much money, and I'm like, I'm not telling you, because you get this big chunk of money, and then you write some very big checks, and you keep a nickel. And so there's a lighting engineer who does a lot of stadium work. Arlington has a lot of stadiums, football, and just a lot of things there. And so it was interesting to get to know a lighting engineer and get to work with one.
Awesome. Does anyone else have any comments or questions they'd like to ask Michelle?
I'd like to ask Michelle. Hi, Michelle, Lee Steiner. I wanted to ask you, if you sit down with a piece of paper and you're drawing these swirls and things with a pencil, or are you designing on a computer right away, or are you, I mean, like, what's your getting it from your head to paper process?
Okay, La Mujer Roja, the design was on a 1-inch yellow sticky. That's where I started. Okay, I'm in a corporate meeting, I'm bored stiff, let's do some sketching. I try to sketch, but I don't do it as much as I want to. Sometimes they come from those sketches, sometimes not. You're speaking to it on the public art ones, you're speaking to an audience, and who commissioned you has something in mind, that something they want to be addressed. So it's not always my subject matter. I always try to put something of me in it, but it's not always completely mine. Like when I got the commission for the firehouse in Frisco, I was actually surprised, because I thought firehouse is like traditional bronzes, and that's not what I do. So I spent a lot of time with the art consultant and the fireman. I mean, I made 2 or 3 trips to Frisco just to visit those guys. And so it's abstract, but it still has a lot of fire symbolics in it. And then my content that I contributed, which is the glass fire hat, is these men are willing to go out every day and risk their lives for us, our property, our businesses, at the risk of their lives. So they are vulnerable. And I think sometimes we just want firemen to do what they're supposed to do and forget these guys are vulnerable. They're always doing it at risk to themselves. So I wanted to address that, and I wanted to help bring that to the forefront of the public's mind to enhance the appreciation of what these guys do. So, but I start on sketches. Sometimes they're in my sketchbook, sometimes not. Sometimes I see pictures somewhere and I might pivot from that. Usually after I get to get my concept down where I like it, then I usually go to Photoshop and finish out my drawing. And I like to drop it in the site where it's going to go. And even for the ones that are going to people's backyards, I think you can, it's excuse me, more comfortable addition to their collections if they can already see it in space, in where it's going to go. So I do a lot of Photoshop.
And that was kind of my follow-up was, do you don't make a scale model, a maquette of each thing. It depends on the person, right? On whether they can visualize it on paper or whether you need to make a model.
I don't, but on the public art ones, I have something usually, and usually it's a competition, and so you're required to do maquettes. That's not my favorite activity, but I am the worst about making a 4-story sculpture and going, oh, you know what? I think if I made that small, I could actually sell them. So I start big and go down. I'm backwards.
Fabulous.
So I remember many years ago, and maybe there's another WIVLA member that goes back that far, when we visited your studio with WIVLA.
Yeah, y'all made 2. And they were fun both times.
Yeah, no, well, I didn't get to this one, but yeah. And you talked about how hard it was to get into the welding, get them to accept you. And
well, just some people are never going to accept you. But anytime there's an issue, I have learned cookies. They don't have to be homemade. Cookies solve a lot of problems. And there are advantages to being a woman.
Well, I totally agree with the cookie strategy. Yeah.
I find your shapes, by the way, very feminine. The curves.
Yes. Well, okay, so when I was in high school and I was just falling in love with artists, art history and that, and my first 2 artist loves were Michelangelo and Georgia O'Keeffe. And they're still some of my favorites. I mean, both of them, they're still up there on the top of my list. We went to Ghost Ranch a couple of years ago.
It's a great place. That's where I went with my WIVLA grant many years ago. And then went back a couple of times. That spouse back there, he uses the baked stuff the same way, though. When he used to visit nursing homes, he always takes baked stuff with him.
Well, I'm really sorry that I couldn't do that and see y'all while the slideshow, because I was wanting more interaction. I couldn't see if y'all were smiling or what, but I really appreciate you inviting me to show my work.
Oh, we're honored you came. This is great. I had missed your studio tour, and I'm so glad you brought your studio to us.
Let me tell you, I'm going to have to move it after 25 years. So if you want to come, you need to come within the next month or so.
Okay.
I can't tell you how long it's going to be there. And it is packed.
Okay.
Is he closing? Are they closing that building?
No. Bill Lipscomb died, and some of y'all may have known Maud Lipscomb, and a developer bought it, and he's remodeled it and raised the rent like 3,000%.
Oh, wow.
And I'm up there in years now. So I think what we're going to do is move me back to the backyard. If we're doing the really big ones, we're subletting, we're subcontracting. We're not in my studio. My studio only had 22-foot ceilings and I needed 4 stories. So we think what we're going to do is tear down the garage and build another metal building in the style of the house and move me back there. And when I need a bigger space, I'll just go rent it for whatever time I need it. But I was making 12-foot sculptures in my backyard, and that 30-foot La Mujer Roja was made in the backyard.
Wow.
Okay.
There's Janet.
Michelle, do you think that, I mean, when I was out there at your thing, it looks to me like the developers are trying to change that to all townhouses. Are they going to destroy that whole studio area?
I don't know, maybe down the line, but he has put money into it. It was a brownfield where right across the street from the studio where Union Pacific was, and that's where all those apartments go. But they've got more land that they haven't built on in that project over towards Maine. But it is being developed. There are new houses in there. There's apartments going in, not just the ones across the street from my studio. And I really think that he may not be I'm not sure how much the owner wants a lot of studios in there. I can't tell you what happened. I think I'm one of the last ones in there.
I remember when it was studios small, and there were a lot of small ones there. And I looked
At one
over
time,
there.
we had 55 studios in that
Yeah,
building.
yeah. And I actually remember looking at the spaces and being told that he figured that he was keeping, I don't know if this is the same owner, but keeping that property, basically, eventually it would be developed into some other thing.
He owned Blumenthal Sheet Metal, which is across the street on Burnett.
Yeah.
And he was really a beautiful man. He was dedicated to his employees, and that Blumenthal Sheet Metal is a union shop, and there are not very many of them left. And he knew if he didn't keep it going, that whoever got it would get rid of the union. And he even had for many years, he had a guy that was just incredibly good who managed all the buildings and plus Blumenthal. And he really wanted to buy it, but he was going to get rid of the union. So Bill wouldn't sell to him. So I have a lot of gratitude for people who are concerned like that. And the other thing is, I didn't realize it because I knew Bill was one of the ones that I met from the welder guys in my class, and I became their pet artist way before he had that space. And he really wanted me in that building and gave me a really good deal. And I didn't realize what a really good deal I had until this guy raised the rent. No, we can't be here anymore. So, but I'm thinking it's time to simplify. And I like the commute of walking out the back door. And we know enough now that we'll approach it differently than we did before. But I welded in a wooden garage for 10 years. You just know how to do it. Just know how to not set your building on fire.
Right. Thank you so much, Michelle. This was fascinating. Just that little window into your world. Thank you very much.
And thank you, Melody.
Yes.
Thank you, Melody, for being the co-pilot.
Yes, I appreciate it, Melody. I was going to be real disappointed and I didn't get to talk to y'all.
Yeah, I mean, really, you just can't believe how well we did last night. We were on. Yeah, it was magic, and the magic left for some reason. I don't know.
I have to say, this was magic. Once the presentation started, I realized, like, now I want to go out and look at sculptures because, we take for granted the spaces. And I think it was your story at the beginning talking about that one, being the touch point for people as they're going into the hospital, and how meaningful that is. And to have created something like that So
They're
I'm so
literally
appreciative,
landmarks.
Jared.
Well, you're welcome. But they are literally landmarks. The when I got the towers, the lady who was at the landscape architects, is one of the landscape architects, had seen my flame de espore, and she took it to the top guy and took him out there. And then when they brought me in and said, let's talk, we're in a conference room, 30 people around a big table. And I was showing them some of my work. You know, you've got to introduce yourself. And she said, you did that sculpture at Baylor Med? I had my picture taken there when I had my babies. I mean, so knowing it was mine, she had stopped there. And so that makes me feel good.
Yes. Yeah, it does. It makes you feel really good when you know your art has touched someone.
Yes.
And again, thank you so much. We are about to come to the end of the meeting now. One thing I do want to mention is that we are when I say we, us on the board, we are discussing the makeup of the board for this coming year. Some of our current board members are staying in their current position or moving to different positions, but we have talked to people that have expressed interest in positions. We are very interested in hearing from you. If you would like to get on the board, it can be work, but it is really fun, and you will make connections and friendships. And it's just, yeah, Jeannie, she just left. Oh, she was waving by. Okay.
And we'd love to have new blood on the board.
We're looking for new blood. Yes. And even if you've been on the board before and you would like to get back on the board, we would love to talk to you.
I was going to say old blood is really nice too.
Yes.
Old blood or new blood.
Very good, Margot.
We like a mixture of blood.
That's right.
The old blood gives you continuity, and the new blood gives you some fresh ideas. We're in the blood. I mean, that's it.
Yeah, we just want blood. Yeah. So if you are interested, and no commitment, if you're interested in serving on the board, you'd like to talk to someone, email us at info@wibla.org or reach out to one of us that are currently on the board. You can find the entire board and their contact information on the Wibla website. And we'd love to talk to you. And I bet you we can talk you into it. Just give us a chance. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.